The Battle of Umbara was a bloodbath for the Republic, and even though the Republic did ultimately win the day, it was a very hard-won victory. The Republic had many disadvantages to reckon with going into the battle, from poor reconnaissance data to Umbara's permanent twilight to the treachery of Ponkrell. But a major factor in why the Republic had such a hard time taking Umbara was the Umbarans themselves. The secretive Umbarans were a very advanced people, and as it turned out, their military technology was decades ahead of the rest of the galaxy. In this video, we're going to take an in-depth look at that tech and discuss why it could have changed the course of the Clone Wars.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Umbara was a bit of a unique world. It was located in the expansion region's Ghost Nebula, which prevented Umbara from seeing a lot of sunlight. The planet was permanently twilight, which had a major effect on the planet's ecosystem. It also had a major effect on the development of the Umbarans, a native, near-human species. To survive the jungles of Umbara, one needed to be stealthy and wary of predators. As a result, the Umbarans learned to be incredibly insular and secretive, even when they no longer needed to fear their jungle's predators. The Umbarans developed a societal structure nearly as ruthless as the jungles they had evolved in. Umbaran society was divided into 100 castes, with castes dominating virtually every aspect of an Umbaran's life. For example, only Umbarans who were part of the upper 10 castes could leave the planet, and the highest class, the Rutai, had oligarchical control over the planet. Umbarans were encouraged to climb the ranks of this class system in any way possible, and the unspoken rule on Umbara was that assassination to achieve one's social goals was perfectly acceptable, as long as you weren't caught. As a result of this ruthlessness, Umbara was a very militarized world, as they had a predisposition to expect their intergalactic neighbors were just as ruthless as they were. They almost never used it, as none of their neighbors actually wanted to mess with them, but the Umbarans were constantly looking for new ways to improve their military tech anyway, for fear of invasion. Because of this, by the time of the Clone Wars, the Umbarans were decades ahead of the rest of the galaxy in terms of war tech, something that no one outside of Umbara knew right up until Umbara's secession. In the Umbaran military, even the rank and file were given advanced tech. If you're like our scriptwriter, you were probably wondering why the Umbarans seemed to be wearing environment suits when you saw the Umbara arc for the first time, despite the fact they were fighting on their homeworld. The answer is that their helmets weren't actually protecting them from the atmosphere or anything. The gases pumped into them were stimulants, chemicals designed to make Umbaran soldiers more effective in combat. It's kinda like how real-world berserkers are theorized to have used hallucinogenic mushrooms to induce a sort of battle rage. Umbaran soldiers were given pretty good weapons too. Their blasters were an improvement on standard market models, and they used high-quality Tabana that rendered their bolts green. Some Umbaran soldiers were also equipped with millicreep assassin droids, small insect-like units often deployed behind enemy lines to wreak havoc. Millicreeps were easy to confuse with Umbaran fauna, especially for those unfamiliar with Umbara's jungles, and this allowed them to quietly slip behind the lines of battle. Once in an optimal position, these droids would lash out with their electrified tails, killing enemies indiscriminately. Typically, millicreeps were deployed in advance of ambushes so as to give Umbaran soldiers a better chance of success. But the Umbaran's most impressive technology was its vehicles. Many Umbaran vehicles were equipped with electromagnetic plasma cannons, unique weapons invented by the Umbarans that were incredibly destructive. We don't know exactly how these weapons were operated, but based on how they appeared in the Clone Wars, we can hazard a bit of a guess. By the looks of things, these weapons fired balls of highly volatile plasma, which were fired along electromagnetic rails, which accelerated these projectiles toward their targets. Our guess about how electromagnetic plasma cannons work is primarily based on observations of the Umbaran hover tank, which is basically just two of those things and a central cockpit on repulsor lifts. The Umbaran hover tank was the primary frontline vehicle used by the Umbaran military, and despite its simple design, it proved incredibly effective. The hover tank was particularly effective at long range, and it appears to have doubled as an artillery piece. However, it was much more vulnerable at close range, since its cannons weren't very maneuverable and it had no other weapons. Also noteworthy were the Umbaran starfighters, which, aside from looking cool, were quite effective in their own right. They were equipped with plasma cannons and missile pods, and they proved effective as both dedicated starfighters and air support. Their controls, as with the other Umbaran vehicles we're about to discuss, were holographic and worked based on the arm and hand movements of the pilot, which made them fairly intuitive and also pretty cool looking once again. Speaking of cool looking, one of the Umbaran's more powerful vehicles was the Impeding Assault Tank, otherwise known as the Umbaran Crawler Tank. Unlike the hover tank, this was a close-range anti-infantry vehicle, capable of burrowing underground to get close to and surprise enemy infantry units. These tanks were reminiscent of massive centipedes, except they were much bigger, much deadlier, and equipped with energy shields. Impeding assault tanks were equipped with 6 powerful laser cannons, 2 on the tail and 4 on the head, and while the 10 body segments of the tank were all armed with anti-personnel blaster cannons. They were devastatingly effective against infantry and light vehicles, as their shields could repel anything short of explosives. But the most formidable Umbaran vehicle was the mobile heavy cannon. A juggernaut of a heavy walker equipped with an artillery-grade electromagnetic plasma cannon. These Titanic war machines were heavily armoured and fitted with warship-grade shields, which not even rocket launchers were effective against. It took starfighter-level firepower to bring them down. They were quite well armed too. Their main guns were capable of disintegrating entire platoons, and they were further armed with powerful anti-personnel laser cannons. All of these war machines were much more advanced than their Republic or Separatist counterparts. The only weapons either side had that were comparable to the electromagnetic plasma cannon were the mass driver cannons that served as the main guns on ATTEs, which, while effective, were still outclassed by the main guns on mobile heavy cannons. When it came to war, the Umbarans undeniably knew what they were doing, and either side would have greatly benefited from simply having access to some of their tech. In fact, Umbaran technology could easily have changed the course of the Clone Wars. The Confederacy, in particular, would have benefited greatly from the Umbaran's vehicle technology. They never really developed a heavy vehicle to counter the ATTE, but the mobile heavy cannon would have fit that niche perfectly, and in general, it would have given the Confederacy a leg up in many vehicle-heavy battles. The Impeding Assault Tank would also have been useful for the Separatists, as it would have bolstered their array of anti-infantry vehicles and, in general, would have been great for harassing Republic infantry formations. The Impeding Assault Tank's ability to reshape battle lines by burrowing under them would also have been a tremendous asset for the Confederacy, as Republic troops were used to the CIS fighting alongside more robust battle lines. On the other hand, the Republic would have benefited greatly from Umbaran's starfighters and their infantry tech. The skill of the Republic's clones was its saving grace in many battles, and it had the potential to become an even more potent advantage if those clones were being fed berserker gas and had more powerful blasters. Millicreep droids could have caused even more chaos behind Separatist lines as they did behind Republic lines, as battle droids were quite easy to disorient and outmaneuver. Above all, Umbaran starfighters would have been a godsend for the Republic Starfighter Corps, which desperately needed any advantage it could get. For obvious reasons, any of these developments could have changed the entire course of the conflict. This begs the question, why didn't either of these scenarios play out? The Umbaran supported both sides at various points of the Clone Wars, so why didn't they lend anyone some of their equipment? The answer is pretty simple. The Umbarans, as always, were first and foremost looking out for their own interests. They were secretive about everything, and they weren't going to let outsiders get their hands on their military technology, even if they were allied at the time. So that's our look at Umbaran technology and how it could have changed the course of the Clone Wars. But what do you think? Would you like to see more tech-related videos like this? Let us know your suggestions in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, if you want to listen to the unobstructed versions of the music we used in this video and a lot of our recent ones too, then make sure you check out our Relax Jack music channel. That's the first link in the description below. And if you also want to join our wider community, check us out on our Geetsly's main Discord where you can chat to myself and other Star Wars fans, and our Geetsly's gaming network where you can join us on Gary's mod. And if you want access to exclusive content you won't find in this channel, do consider donating to the Patreon too. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.